Welcome everybody to the webinar tonight. Just to confirm, Susan, can you let me know that my screen showed up? Okay, well, we'll go ahead and get started. I got a couple people saying that it's there. Tonight's presentation and webinar is going to concentrate on an introduction into the software to generate EBVs through the National Sheep Improvement Program. And it's important as we have this conversation to acknowledge some of the history of where this software came from. And because of that, there's some unique things that we need to deal with as we look at the software if you've never seen it before. It's important to know that our software through NSIP is actually managed in Australia, and it's managed by an organization called LAMPLAN. And because of that, at times you'll see metric units such as kilograms and millimeters, and it's important to know what type of traits that you are entering and to know whether or not you're entering it in pounds or whether you're entering it in metric units. And I'll highlight some of those places as we go through the presentation tonight. I think it's also good to point everybody to the National Sheep Improvement Program website, and that's where I'm going to start, because recently in May there was a Pedigree Master software manual that was put together by John Carlson and Mary Sorensen. And so as we go through the presentation tonight, we're going to highlight some of the things that are in there. We're also going to highlight some of the things that we aren't going to talk about tonight, but as you become used to Pedigree Master, some of the extra options that are available as you become an advanced user. And so when we talk about going to the website and trying to get information, if you go to the NSIP Education and Info link and then go to the NSIP Info, you then have to take your cursor slowly over, and I'll point you to Pedigree Master Help. And once you get to that website, we have right here Pedigree Master Manual for 2014. And this is the manual that I'll be highlighting today. If you've never been in Pedigree Master before, I'd highly recommend printing it out. It goes through step by step most of the process and will aid you tremendously in getting started. So I won't load that, but we'll go ahead and go to the next step. Is after you've loaded that Pedigree Master Help, I think you need to think about downloading the program. And I've been saying Pedigree Master, but there's actually two different programs out there. For those of you that have been with the program for a while, you're aware that there was something called Pedigree Wizard. Pedigree Wizard is our old version of software that was used for entering data, but you could only use it on a 32-bit computer. We are converting everybody at this point over to Pedigree Master. Pedigree Master can be used on both on a 32-bit computer as well as a 64-bit. And for those of you that don't understand that language, a 64-bit computer is what all the modern computers in the last 2 or 3 years likely that you're buying would be used as. So we would highly recommend not downloading the Pedigree Wizard software, but going straight to Pedigree Master. It is the most recent software that's been updated by LAMPLAN. So to find how you do that, once again, we'll go back to the website, and in Education and Info link, then you need to go to Education and Info and go to NSIP information. I'll have to get my cursor slowly here. And as we slowly go over, we can find updates, Pedigree Master and Pedigree Wizard, so PW and PM program updates. When you click on this, you will now find that there's some references to LAMPLAN and KidPlan, which is where it was generated in Australia. And if we look at this top one, it says Pedigree Wizard, and then we look at the bottom one, it says Pedigree Master. I'm not going to download this program. I've already done this, but this is the process at which, if you're brand new and starting, that you start right here and download Pedigree Master after you've got that program. Some of the rest of the process is that you would need to contact the NSIP office to get your breed code and get registered in NSIP. But tonight we're going to concentrate on entering the data. If you have questions on getting started and who you call, there's definitely some resources on the website to get you going in that direction. As we look at Pedigree Master and Pedigree Wizard, it's important to note that Apple computers are not supported by these programs. It's entirely a Windows-based program. However, If you are an Apple user, there's a couple different options available. I haven't used them, but some Apple users are familiar with software such as Boot Camp or Virtual Machine that can run virtual PC programs. We're not going to touch on that tonight, but if that's something you're interested in, that's worth experimenting on. Your other alternative is to use somebody else as your data manager. The NSIB board is currently working on ways to make this easier for Apple users, but at this time you either have to have a simulated PC or use a separate data manager. So after you've downloaded the program, we're going to switch over to what that program looks like. I'm going to give you a brief introduction to the way this program looks. One of the first questions I always get is, can I increase the size of this window? You cannot increase the size of this window. If you're familiar with how to change your screen resolution, you could change your screen to make this Pedigree Master box cover your entire screen. But this is generally how producers are going to see it when they load it, and unless you're really comfortable changing your screen resolution, I would suggest just leaving it like this. The print is plenty big to see it as you go about using it. So we've got the program downloaded and you've opened it up for the first time. At this time, it's important to look at a couple different things. I'll highlight this black bar across the middle, NSIP mode, and that says that body and fleece weights, the units are in pounds, and then all other information is in standard international units or metric. And when it states that, that means that you can enter all your data as in pounds, but when you enter your ribeye depth as well as your fat depth, those are metric units, so they're measured in millimeters. Once you get started with your program and have it downloaded and you've got it into NSIP mode, it will stay in that mode. But to get to that point, I'll walk you through some of the process. So as we look at the top of the screen, going left to right, if we go up in this upper left-hand corner, it says 620102. And 620102 is your breed code as well as your individual code. My polypay flock, all polypay flocks start with a 6 and a 2, and then the 0102 are my individual flock within the polypay breed. So if we click on this, if you have just downloaded Pedigree Master, you're going to have to enter your breed and your flock code. And you can, just like Excel, once you click on something, you can go left and right you can go to the right with tab, or you can click as you enter. And so we enter 62. And then we have to enter 0102. At this point, this is all I'm going to show you on this part of it. I do want to remind you, though, later. I'm going to go back to F buttons, F5, F6, F7, and F8. And what we can do later on is once you start entering data, you can set these up as shortcut keys. You can decrease how many keystrokes as you enter your data. The other thing I think it's important to do right away is most of us in the United States usually enter our dates as month, day, and year, January 13th, 2014. And you need to set that at this point. When you set it, it will then carry through for the rest of the program. If you don't do anything, it's going to default to the day, the month, and the year. So you have to make sure that you're doing it the way that you want to enter it. Then in the bottom right-hand corner, save and close. Then as we look at some of the rest of the surface of this, we see a pedigree display, reports and utilities, and add and change records, as well as an address book. We go to our address book. This is where you have the ability to once again enter your breed code, which is 62, your flock code, for me, 0102, the stud name or the name of the operation, and we go by Schauer Sheep Company, and you run out of spaces, so I have to put a dot in. The stud master in this case would be Christopher Schauer, and then you can go through and enter once again your name, the address, the city, the state, and the postal code, as well as some of the other information. And this may not seem important on the surface, but later on I'll show you how you can print out an entire pedigree, and having some of this information entered will allow you to customize your pedigree. Once you have entered all your data, you can go ahead and hit close. Some of the other parts of the customization that we need to look at is making sure, once again, that this black bar is in that spot. If it does not show up, you have to hit Control C. And this is in the Pedigree Master manual. When you hit Control C, you get this Convert Database green box. And at this point is when you'd want to hit Load NSIP Ranges. And that converts your program over from the land plan version, which is all in kilograms, to the NSIP version, which is all in pounds. So I already have got it loaded into NSIP, but it then indicates that NSIP traits have been loaded. At that point, you can close that down. There's a lot of other things that you can do in the customization. We're not going to get into that right away. One of the texts on the screen says, isn't the breed code 62 really a USA maternals code? That is correct. I misspoke. Most of the breeds will fall into an index, and we've got 4 indexes. So the 62 code is used to generate the maternal breeds index. If you're unsure on where your breed falls, obviously talking to Mary Sorensen or Reed Redden with NSIP can help you to differentiate that. But that helps us to generate our indexes and help with our EVVs to sort out the maternal from the terminal sires, as well as the wool breeds and the hair breeds. Next thing I want to show you briefly, but we haven't entered any data yet, is pedigree display. And when we look at pedigree display, we'll be able to see all the data that we've entered and be able to look at it and see if that data is correct. We'll also be able to change that data at another point. The downloaded program has some generic data entered that can be deleted at some point, but right now you can see that there's some numbers in there that have nothing to do with my flock. If you choose to, you can go ahead and delete those. I would encourage you to delete those, and we'll show you how to do that in a while. The second one that you don't need to worry about right away is reports and utilities. Reports and utilities gives you another way of looking at some of your data, and the only one that I'll point to is if you switch over to data files in main database, you get your data in a spreadsheet format. And this is a place where you can modify your data, you can clean up your data if you've made mistakes. But I'd encourage you as a new user to not switch to this screen. You need to know what all of these different labels across the top of the columns mean, and this isn't necessarily the best way, but it's one way to look at your data once you're familiar with the program. And then I hit Close Program, and then I went back over to, I hit the back button. To do that again, most screens have a back button on it or a close button, and then some also have a save and close. So make sure that you're using the button that gets you back to where you want to be. As we look at progressing to being a new producer and wanting to enter data, I think it's important to note that when you look at the Pedigree Master software manual, that it's going to indicate that there are 3 different ways that you can enter data. You can enter data from a spreadsheet, as in downloading from Excel. You have to have all your columns in the correct format. I do not encourage new producers to do it this way. I think it's important to learn how the software program works and know how to find the mistakes in your data entries. As you become more advanced in the software program, I think it is a way to decrease how much time that it takes to enter data, but it's I would call it an advanced technique for entering data. If you are an old user that used the old Pedigree Wizard, the software manual will indicate and tell you how to transfer your data from Pedigree Master over to Pedigree Wizard. And we're not going to cover that today. I think most of us are interested in looking at this as a new producer and entering data directly through the program from scratch. And that's the point where I'm going to start. And as we go through this process, if you've got questions, by all means type in the chat box. I'll try to look at it periodically. I know Jim Morgan's on. He's very familiar with the program and can answer some of your questions if he's willing to as well. So if you're a new producer looking at adding and changing records, there's a couple places to start. And I'm going to start by showing you some of the shortcut keys at the beginning and show you how to use them later on. The thing that I like to do first is talk about the sires that you have. And that gives us a good place to start as a new producer, is what sires do you own? And so I went over to the green box, and it says summaries, groups, sires, and re-index database. And so as a new producer, you need to decide how much data do you want to enter. The general recommendation is to start with this year's lamb crop. So if it's 2014, the 2014 lamb crop. If you're interested further back in time, it's got its positives and negatives. I'd encourage you to talk to your mentor about the positives and negatives of entering older data. But we're going to make the assumption that we're entering maybe a couple older sires and then entering the 2014 lamb crop. So when we go to sires, we can see that it clicks up that there was 2 sires that are already entered, but we also now have the chance to add our new sire. And so I will hit new record to enter a sire. Now my blue box shows up over here. The pick list, you'll see later on the pick list, there'll be a drop-down menu, and you want your sires to be in pick list 1. At this point, you need to enter the name of that sire. And the name of the sire, meaning the 16-digit code for NSIP. And this is a good point to talk about that 16-digit code. All animals need a 16-digit code, and I'll type the code, and then you can see how this works. Once again, the maternal flock code is 62, and my internal number for my polypay breed is 0102. That will be the start of the 16-digit code for all of my animals. The next thing you need to do is enter the year that the animal was born. And under the assumption that these were sires that are a little bit older, we'll say this was a 2011 sire. And you're going to use this 16-digit code for the rest of everything that you do within NSIP and Lamb Plan for entering all of your data. This is important because even if you sell that animal, that number stays with that animal, and it allows us to link all of the sheep in your breed or in the nation together by having a consistent 16-digit code system. So this ram was born in 2011. The next 2 digits are somewhat redundant. A lot of people will go ahead and put 11 again, as in that was the year that that lamb was born. Even though we've already typed 2011 once, we'll type 11 again. I, however, do it a little bit differently. You can enter letters and come at some of these spaces, but you have to be very careful about doing that. And Pedigree Master Manual highlights that there are some letters that you do not want to enter into those 16-digit spaces. So I think the general recommendation of entering 11 in there would be appropriate. In my case, I do enter Schauer Sheep Company or SS so that I know that that's my animal. If somebody else looks at that animal, and they'll know that SS is Schauer Sheep Company. There is a list of about 12 different codes that you cannot use, and I think it's important to know what those codes are and steer away from them. The next thing you want to do is enter that individual animal's number. And since this is a sire that already exists in our flock, maybe that sire was born in 2011, so his individual number is 11, and we'll just say 01. We'll say he's the first buck born in 2011. At that point, that sire is entered. If we tab over, we can give that sire a name. So we can call that sire, we'll call him Buddy. That is all you need to do. You don't need to enter anything in the progeny column for getting started. And then there's a note column, and you could put bought from Pages Polypay. You can put where you bought that ram. So if you're done with entering sires and you only had one sire, you could be done. You could enter another sire, new record added. And I am going to enter one more because I'll be entering a fake data set today, and I want to have a couple different sires. So I'm going to say 620102. This lamb was born in 2010, and we'll say that this is, we'll use the traditional way to number and say this place 10 again, and then this would be 10. We'll call it the 11th lamb born that year. We'll call this lamb Spendy. And then we'll say we bought this one from Carlson's. Okay. At this point, we can close this window. We've entered 2 sires. We've got all of our sires on our place entered. The next step If you've already entered animals in the past, you want to kind of review your current flock, we go back to this pedigree display window. I'm looking over at the notes on the side of my screen. How does Pedigree Master handle sale of animals to a new NSIP flock? Can you import, export the data and info, or do you have to re-enter it? If that flock, if you use that 16-digit flock because of that flock code, because it came from that an NSIP flock, all that information is going to carry over. You don't need to enter any data. If you are buying from a non-NSIP producer, you are not going to have that 16-digit code, so you have to generate one for him. At that point, he's not going to have any linkage to some other flocks. There is a way to enter some data for that animal, but you'd have to enter it as a lamb, and most of us don't get most of that data, and we didn't collect it. So I would encourage not entering data that you did not collect. The integrity of NSIP is based on trust, based on entering data that you're comfortable with, and I tend to steer the people that I work with to only enter data that they collected and that they collected accurately. So we're looking at the screen that shows us what animals that we have currently entered. There are, on the right-hand side, you can see that we've got a status of current, sold, culled, reference, dead, missing, active, and unknown. As you go through your flock on your right-hand side, if you say, well, I haven't touched this Pedigree Master program since last time, or since last lambing season, you can go through every single one of your animals and indicate that this one got sold, or this one is dead, or this one is missing. But if they're alive in your flock and still in your lambing flock, you'd label that animal as current. And these are for existing animals. So we've reviewed our animals, and even though this is the generic data set, I'm going to say they're all accurate. And so I'm going to go backwards. And this is the point where I want to start entering data to add and change records. Now I'm going to show you the long way of doing this, and then show you why the F5, 6, or the F keys that we talked about, and I'll go back and enter those. So if we're going to start with our 2014 lamb crop, animal identification is for that lamb. 620102, once again, is born in 2014, and we put the animal code again, and it's 01. We go over to our sire list, and we go to our drop box where we got our sires listed, and we'll say that one was from Spendy. Once again, it shows up as 2010 101011. Now at this point, if the dam, if you already were an NSIP or you purchased the dam from somebody else, you'd enter in its 16-digit code. Since we're brand new, we have to generate a code for the dam, no different than we generated the code for the sire. And so we'll say that this is 620102, and we'll call this a 4-year-old dam, 2010, born in 10, and we'll call it 0232. So now we've entered our sire and our dam for the lamb. Then when we go over to the next box over, sex, male or female, we'll say this is a buck lamb. Birth type and rearing type. Single, twin, triplet, quad, or quin. We can say that this lamb was born as a twin. Let's say that its contemporary died in the lambing jug or before weaning, and so it was reared as a single. This is important because the program will adjust for lambs that are raised as twins versus raised as singles. So this leads into a good question of when should I enter my data? Should I be entering my data right after birth? Should I enter my data right after weaning? My suggestion is to wait until weaning, or until after weaning, or until after you've made your replacement selections. Collect the data on all the animals that you have, and we usually collect the data on all of our animals through weaning, and that's usually the time we start to make replacement selections. And so as we enter the data, we'll know, did that animal get reared as a twin or a single? Also, we can decide at that point whether it's going to be a culled animal or whether it's going to be an animal that we keep as a replacement. Then I would then turn around and update that data at the yearling time frame. So I'm really only entering data twice a year. Conception method, unless you really get into AI, you're probably going to use natural on all of them. You do not need to put a conception date. I don't enter the conception date. It's not something that I keep track of, but it does give you that option for doing that. And lambing ease. And if this is something that you find important, no assistance for number 1. At this point, just like in the rams and the ewes, you can put a nickname on this animal if you so choose. If you don't put a nickname, it's going to use the last 4 digits, 1401. It's also then going to go and just leave that as its nickname. I was trying to build a standard nickname, and we'll just leave it like that. Once again, status, like I indicated earlier, if this lamb's going to stay in our flock, it's current. If you already know that you're going to sell it, or that it died, or you're going to cull it, you can change it at this time. You can also change that at any time in its life. You can also place a comment in here. Anything you want. If it's a small flock and you can say that the ewe didn't raise its lambs very well. You could put that it had a ewe that didn't mother very well. That would be important. Looks like I lost my dams. And I think I called that a 2010 0232. I don't know what I hit that made it do that. Called the lambing ease of 1. The next thing that's important is the stud drop. And as you look at this, there's another place in the program you can change these names and use them however you would like. We're going to concentrate on using the standard names. And it's this is part of differentiating contemporary groups, in that you don't want, if you lamb twice a year, you want to know and you want to tell the program that you're lambing twice a year. So if this is my standard group and I lamb all of my ewes at this time, this would just be my stud drop group. However, if I have a regular group that lambs in May, but then I also have another group that lambs in February, you could have one group as an early group and one group as a late group, or one group as an early and one group as a stud group. If you get into fall lambing, you can label that as out of season. We're going to go ahead and say that these were up here in North Dakota, March, late March, early April type lambing. So we can, and that's going to say when we lamb all of our ewes at that point. So we're just going to call it stud drop 1. The next part is starting to enter your data. Thank you. I had only 2 digits. There, got my ewe fixed. As we go to entering our data, you have to really keep track of your cursor in Pedigree Master. At times it seems like it gets mysterious and you don't have it in the place that you thought you did. The birth date, we'll say 03/31/2014, and you can see that I messed that up, and that's just as I indicated. 3/31. That time I got it entered correctly. And once again, this goes back to your first screen. You do have to make sure that you've got your dates being entered as day, month, day, year. And I can't remember if I did that. I think I had that as day, month, year. 31, 3, 20, 13. There, March 31st, 2014. The next step is what its weight was. We can say that this was an 8-pound lamb, and we'll say that we're entering this after weaning. And so at this point, you have to pick your weaning date. We'll say that we wean those lambs on, got March 31. We'll say June 5th. And we'll say that the lamb had a 70-pound weaning weight. So the next question I get is, what is CFAT, EMD, SC, and WEC? If you're interested in carcass traits, especially the terminal sire type breeds, these are the columns where you'd enter all of your back fat, your muscle depth, your scrotal circumference, and your egg count. And it's important to remember that those are the traits that are entered in metric, the fat and the loin muscle depth. It's also important to know that just because you can enter data there, you don't need to collect the data. And I'm not going to talk about when to scan your animals today, but traditionally one good scan at the appropriate time point, depending on if you're a terminal sire or range type breed, is what's important. And there are critical time points at which to make those scans. So sticking with those critical time points and not trying to fill every box on the program, it will generate an EBV for muscle depth and fat thickness with only one point, and it's more important to have it be the correct point. If you're interested in EID, you have the ability to work with EID. We're not going to cover that today. So at this point, we're saying we entered this after lambing. We said that we kept this animal, that it's current, and we're going to hit save record. I don't know why I did that. Oops. See if I missed something. Current. I already saved that animal. Let's go ahead and I'm going to make a small change here. It indicates the last animal is saved, so at some point I hit save by accident. So we're going to go on to our second lamb, and there. I am going to delete this and not save that lamb. You saw that we had to do all the typing for the 16 digits. I think that's important to go back now and kind of show you what these F5, F6, F7 buttons have the ability to do. These are shortcut keys, so that as you're entering this data transaction by transaction, you can hit one button and generate a whole bunch. And so in this case, I'm going to go 620102, and we're entering our 2014 lamb crop. And we're going to say that every single one of them is 14. Now, every time that I hit the F5 button, it is going to generate that data stream. If you wanted to put a date in there, such as I know that my weaning date was June 5th, 2014, you could have that be your weaning date. I'm writing it down so I remember what I'm doing. And F5 was my ID. And then month, day, year. So once again, I had this as being entered in month, day, and year. So if it was born, it would be 3/21/2014. We can hit save and close. We'll go back to add change records. And so now we're going to go on to our second record. So now I can hit my F5 key, and it generates my 6201/2014-14, and then we'll call it in my numbering system. I enter 14 again because that's the year the lamb was born, and 02. Once I do that, I can go back and look at entering my sire, and we're going to say that this was the twin of the previous buck, or for the previous lamb. Oops. And the one that I entered was, and we're going to say that this is a female, and it was one of those, it was a twin. Now at this point you're going to have to choose that it was raised as a twin, even though this animal died. We said that it was the twin of the previous one, but it died before we got to weaning. However, over here we can change this over to dead. It's also a good time to confuse matters worse on our animal identification. In this, and the 2 digits of year 14, if you take that year out of there and put a CU I just got a comment that said, Chris, are you watching the screen? This is not necessarily on the screen. Trying to see if, can somebody confirm that they can still see Pedigree Master? Okay, it looks like we still have Pedigree Master. This is a place in the 11th and 12th position, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, that we can enter CU or CO. And if we enter that at this time, before we enter post-weaning weights, this animal will not have an EBV generated for it, but its information will be contributed to the EBVs for its sire and its dam. So if you're looking at data that's been being entered up through weaning, and you know that lambs have passed away, this is a good place to do that. I don't mean to confuse the matters, but oftentimes producers are interested in doing that. The one limit on that is only 25% of your flock can be entered that way, so you can't enter it just try to decrease your costs. You need to enter it strategically for animals that are called or do pass away. Once again, this is the lambing group 1. And then we're going to go ahead and if I remember right, we entered the lamb as 03/31/2014. We're going to call this a 9-pound animal, and that it died before it got to weaning, so we do not have a weaning rate. Okay, we're going to go ahead and enter 2 more lambs just to show you how to once again decrease some of the data entering that's needed. I'm going to hit F5 and to decrease how many times that this thing errored on me by me messing around, and I apologize for that. I hit F5, so it generated another lamb. We'll call it 1403. And at that point, it repeated the last animal's pedigree. And while that animal, that gave it the sire that we'd already entered, and it gave it the dam. Now if this would have been a twin of something else, then that would be the appropriate pedigree. But it wasn't the twin. So we're going to go ahead and change that to the dam that it actually was. And we'll say that this was a 0901 dam. We'll call it a male. Once again, we're going to say twin, raised as a twin, and reared as a twin. Conception method of natural, lambing ease of 1. Nickname is going to stay the way it is. We're going to call it a birth date. It did generate a birth date of 3/31 because we hit repeat last animal's pedigree. We can change that at that point. We'll say it was born 0401, so it was born on May 1. Call it a 10-pound lamb. We got out to weaning, and I'm going to show you one more trick. These dates are shortcut dates, so just like the F5, 6, 7, and 8 buttons, I could hit F8, and it's going to enter it. Looks like I entered that date incorrectly at some point, so we're going to take that out. But you can do the same thing. Oops. You can edit this date. These are date shortcuts. And 06/01/2014. Then click away from it. Now every time I want to use, I think it was supposed to be the 5th. click away from it. And now I can drag this. Click and drag with your left-hand mouse and put June 5th, 2014. We'll call this a 75-pound lamb. We did not collect any carcass data at this point. And it's current. Everything's good. We'll hit save render. Now the system's working the way it's supposed to. So I'm going to go ahead and hit F5. And then we're on our fourth lamb, 1404. Now I'm going to repeat the last animal's pedigree. And by doing that, we do have that it showed up as an April 1, like its twin. Same sire, same dam. Call it a female. This borders is a twin and a rearling. And Todd thought I was making a mistake. There's a good chance I was making a mistake, but that one I actually got right. Lambing is a 1. Once again, it's our standard stud drop group, and we have a weight at birth of 11 pounds. And now I'm going to continue to enter this as a little bit further down the data chain. Now we have 6/5, 2014, going to be 80-pound lamb. Now let's say that that was at weaning. Now we have a couple other data points, early post-weaning and post-weaning weight. And this is where it starts to be important to follow some of the guidelines on, and if you click on the left-hand side, I just left-clicked on early post-weaning. This weight has to be taken between 80 and 240 days of age. Post-weaning weight has to be taken between 160 and 340 days of age. Once again, you do not need to collect every one of these weights, but it will generate EBVs for growth, as well as affecting the maternal and the sire side. But for the weights that you do collect, you want to make sure you put them in the correct location. Since I'm a polypay breeder, I take a weaning, and well, not because I'm a polypay breeder, but the way I do it, I take a weaning weight, and then I'm probably going to take a post-weaning weight or a yearling weight. And yearling weight is 290 to 430 days of age. I'm going to change this to a male. So since let's say I took a yearling weight, because I weigh all my bucks right before lambing again, because that's the only time I touch them, 04, 01, and I'm going to get in trouble because this lamb's going to be too old. It's not going to let me do it. It's a good way to show you. 04, 01, 2015. Oops. Pedigree Master does help in that it usually doesn't let you enter mistakes. We'll see if it lets me enter it. We'll say that this was a 275-pound buck at 1 year of age. We'll say that at that same time is when I collected my fat thickness, and this is going to be in millimeters. And then your eye muscle depth will be in millimeters, so 22 millimeters of eye muscle depth. Lack of anything else, we'll just put a 5 for fat depth. Hogget. I get asked, what is a hogget? A hogget is somewhere between 1 year and 2 years of age, 410 to 550 days of age. So not exactly 2 years. This goes back to the Australian influence. We also have the ability to enter adult weights, different time points throughout its life. I don't know a lot of producers that are using all those adult time points. Most of us kind of get for birth weight, weaning weight, and out to yearling weight. And that's probably where we're going to stop. If you're a Rambouillet type breeder, Targhee type breeder, you can enter all your fleece traits. So going on these post-weaning, yearling, hogget, all these, you can switch over to your fleece, greasy fleece weight, clean fleece weight, fiber diameter, as well as fiber diameter, coefficient of variation, the yield, and all the traits that go out to the right-hand side of the screen. So right now we'll see if this thing lets me save a yearling. It did let me save that as a 2015. I wasn't sure. Okay, we've entered 4 data points, and I think we're getting close to the end, and I think that's where I want to hit exit, no save. I didn't enter a new lamb. And let's go back and look at pedigree display. Now we can see the lambs that I've entered. And if you remember, I was struggling on my first lamb. It didn't seem like it liked it very much. So I evidently didn't save my first one correctly. But lambs 2, 3, and 4 have the data that we've entered. And up in this upper right-hand corner, if we hit pedigree, we actually get a pedigree. Once we get linkage to other sheep, all these other places will be filled in. If we bought sheep from other breeders, it will fill in that data, or if once we've started entering data over time, 2-3 years down the road. We also have the ability to change what information is on there. Right now the maternal index is on there. I didn't get into indexes today, but you can put the different EVV traits that you want on there. Most of us will use the maternal index, and then you can hit pedigree view. And at this point, many people are very interested in having pen cards for sales. You could hit print. And this is one of the strengths of using the Pedigree Master software program, is it gives you all this information at your fingertips. I'm going to have to hit escape to get out of that window, and then I have to hit close to get out of this window. Then I have to hit back. So that was quickly a way to look at entering data. The next step in that process is this data does need to be submitted before you get your EBVs back, and it needs to be submitted to Australia. And I'm going to at least go to the next step, which is summaries, validation, and export and backup. And this is a very important step before you submit your data. When you look at summaries, this gives us a chance, or summaries, export, and validation. This gives us a chance to see if we have any mistakes in our data. And validation is the important part that I use every time. You have the ability to put some constraints on your validation. As you get data entered, you probably only need to validate your current year's lamb crops of 2013 to 2014, and your breed would just be all of them, and then you hit validate. And what it comes up with is a sheet that looks like this. In the upper right-hand corner, your more serious is a level 1, and your less serious is a level 10. So it's going to list different error levels, and in this case it only lists one error, level 7, and it'll tell you what your problem was. And this goes back to, I didn't put a weaning age in. I'll just say that that was intentional, not a mistake on my part, but I didn't put a weaning age in for number 3 and number 4. And then it will tell you what some of the other issues that are going on with your data. You can have multiple error levels, and it's going to list everything going down the page. At that point, you can print it if you would like, and so that you have it accessible. Then you hit escape, and you can go back and fix your data. A couple different ways of fixing your data. You can go back to the pedigree display. This isn't where we entered it, but it's where we can fix it. And it looks very similar to entering the data. So if you went back and you said, oh, my lamb in the third lamb, we didn't have the correct data. We can change that data at that point. If we said the weaning date was incorrect, we can change that at that point. I think I'm remembering why it said that was not the right weaning date, because it said 2015. So it's going to catch those mistakes. At that point, after you validated your data and you fixed your data, and I probably should fix the data that I just said was a problem, you would have to go in and fix your yearling weight. You can also delete animals, and I indicated up here that this was you've got a listing of animals that weren't really in your flock, so you can delete that animal. Yep, and I am sure, so make sure that you don't want to do it. You can keep going down the list and delete all those animals. You can check all your carcass, your wool traits, your reproduction traits. As you get used to Pedigree Master, you'll figure out that once you have data entered and submitted to Australia and you get it back, it'll actually list your EBVs. So the last thing that you're going to end up doing is submitting your data to Australia. And I think it's important at that point to have the Pedigree Master manual in front of you. That's not a process we're going to do today, but you are going to have to generate a data backup that you send off to Australia. I think it's important to use your mentor at this time because the way that Pedigree Master generates a backup, you're going to have to end up having a file called a zip file, and you're going to have to make sure that gets to Australia. So if you're unfamiliar with working with different types of files and where they're being stored. That's important. Many of us have the ability to use an email archive or a computer archive, and this is where we'd be sending that file. And the way I do it is I create an internal archive or an internal file that's going to be sent off to Australia, and then I create that archive. Include breeding values in the backup. If this is a normal one for sheep genetics, you don't need to. So we can just hit no, and then it's going to put it in a location. It's going to put it in sheep genetics, and I would go with your default location and backup file created. Now, you're going to have to send an email to Australia, and working with Mary Sorensen, you have gotten that email already from Australia to know where to send it to, and you'd have that process, and you're going to have to go find that file on your computer to go ahead and send it off. So once again, working with a mentor is a good point to work with right there. We've kind of come up on close to 7 o'clock. There's a lot of different ways to enter data. If you're new to the system, you're probably going to get assigned a mentor. I'd encourage you using the mentor. They can answer a lot of the questions since there are so many different ways of submitting data. But hopefully I gave you a good view of what the software has the ability to do and some of its strengths as well as some of its weaknesses. I think the most important thing is to enter good data in a timely manner so that you don't forget what you did. Make sure you write down your dates when you wean. Those are some of the little things that if you wait to enter your weaning data to the year-old and then you forgot what date they were weaned, those are important things to remember as you're collecting your data. I've seen some of the comments on the screen. Sometimes it's good to store that file separate from your computer and putting it into a different computer. If you've got that, that would be fantastic. Those of us that are used to using computers for work know that the more times you back up, that's a good thing. It's really easy to lose data. If you have any questions, once again, use your breed representative. You will be assigned a breed representative as well as a mentor, and they can answer a lot of those questions. And with that, I think we're hitting at 1 hour, and we probably need to close this down. Susan, is there any other comments?
Just if people have some more questions.
Okay.
We've been going through a bunch of stuff during your presentation, but if people have some more general questions, then some questions specifically for you.
Well, I know they're smarter
It looks
people
to me
than
like.
Go ahead.
I was going to say it looks like all software has a learning curve, but it looks like there's a lot of shortcuts and things that as you learn to use the software, it should become easier. It may seem a little overwhelming at first, but it looks like there's a lot of things that will become easy as you get familiar with it.
Yep, and there was a lot of problems with producers with Pedigree Wizard, the old software, and I will tell you that Pedigree Master really, once you get used to using it, is not a bad program to use. This was the long way of entering data. There also is the ways to import data using Excel files, but I really think it's important to understand how that software is working. So entering it the long way, literally for a couple years, so you feel comfortable with the way the data is supposed to look, is a great way of doing it. And with Pedigree Master now being available for 64 and 32-bit computers, it really captures everybody except for our Apple and Mac type users. And there are some ways around that to make that work. So don't be scared by the software. Most of the producers that I've worked with, I had a mentee that had never touched it. In one session, an hour and a half, we got her up and running, and then she entered her data, and within a week she had her EBVs back. So you can get up and running fairly easy. Just make sure that you validate your data, and that way you can find your mistakes.
You have some more questions out there? I see a few people are typing.
Yep, I think Reed's making some comments right now on cull animals. If you do choose to use in the 11th and 12th position the CU or the CO, remember you're not going to get an EBV for that animal. You have to do it before you enter a post-weaning weight. So you can't enter anything past weaning, and you will not get an EBV, but at least its birth data and its weaning data will contribute to the EBV of its sire and dam and be included in your data set, and you can only do 25% of your flock in that manner. And as Jim just indicated, if you sell that animal to another NSIP flock, don't mark it as culled. That's marked as sold. It was part of your animal. And there's a question of then how do we get a list of current animals and not have to sit through the ones we sold? I think if you look. Cody did comment that there are instructions in Pedigree Master in the software manual on how to download the Excel spreadsheets and upload, put your data into Excel and then do it instead of individually entering data. I think it's a great way of doing it. Once again, knowing how to use the software is important. I also show you something else. And I do this for those of us that like spreadsheets that are scared about importing. If you go to reports and utilities and you go to data files and then main database, you actually get your database. And once you have your lambs entered, you can go in and let's say you entered them at birth, then you can go in and do the weaning weights, as well as the rest of the data. So that's another way of entering data, not quite as transactional. It's a little bit more Excel based, but you're not importing data. You actually get to see the data as it goes in. Once again, you need to know, you have a little bit less guidance on this screen. You have to know that your post-weaning weight was within the correct window. You have to know that your early post-weaning weight was in the correct window. So the further you get away from the transactional, the better you have to know the software and know that you're entering data correctly.
Questions? I see Laura has a question. If you rent your ram to another flock, will that data show up on my reports if the other farm enters? Oh.
Those are, I think Laura's my mentee. Yep, Reed just commented that if you rent, as long as they're entering LambPlan as long as they're entering data into the program, then it's going to show up. But if they don't enter, obviously nothing's going to be put in. And I would, as rams are rented out, if you're going to enter and put, it doesn't really work to put somebody else's offspring into your flock. So collecting the data at that point really comes down to the other flock being an enrolled member of NSIP. There's obviously a lot of people out there that actually have a lot more experience than I do and know some of the older tricks to the Pedigree Master. We're trying to use mentors and breed representatives. So as you get enrolled in NSIP, we go to the people that work for you. If you've got a good mentor and they're working for you, I would suggest going to them. That way we can decrease all the calls going to one or two people and try to spread the workload. That being said, Pedigree Master is only about a year old, and so I think all of us still have a learning curve. Some people have entered a lot, some people haven't. I saw a question earlier whether any breed associations were entering data. I'm not aware of any. I didn't see the answer, but I'm not aware of any breed associations entering data. That kind of is the way the beef industry and the pork industry runs. But at this point, everything comes down to individual entry by individuals. There is a list of data managers on the NSIP website. If you're averse to entering your own data, that they will do it for you. But that is a consulting type service, and there's a couple different people to use.
I want to thank Chris for this evening's presentation. It's always hard to have to work the software while everybody's watching. It's like they see any typo you might make. I think he did a great job, and again, I think as you get more familiar with the software, things probably just get easier, but there's a learning curve for everything, and if the software's only been around for a year, kind of same thing, they may have some tweaks to work out of it.
Every
So again,
typo
thank
is
you, Chris.
every typo is intentional. It's good learning experiences. That's my defense.